Actually learnt this topping technique from Green Aqua a few years ago. The constant, hopefully, improvement of the scape over the weeks, months and even years. Hi everyone, welcome to this new video where I am going to update this beautiful nature aquarium that was scaped 3 weeks ago in this AQUARIUM Starline 90. You can see the full build video. I'll leave a link in the description. Safe to say that Lawrence, the client, has done a magnificent job at maintaining it so far. As requested, let all of the stems, he's not trimmed anything back. We'll do a full maintenance session, clean the glass, trimming, water change. We'll clean the hose, we'll clean the glassware. There's a little bit of die-off from the Trident Fern, but apart from that, all the plants look really healthy. As a little bonus at the end, we'll add all of our display fish, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Got some beautiful specimens to show you. Shout out to Maidenhead Aquatics at Huntingdon for the cheeky little discount. So without further ado, let's crack on with maintenance. First job, clean the glass. It has been cleaned really well so far, but there's a little bit of algae build up towards the substrate. So best tool for that is the scraper. This is a Hugo Kamishi scraper with an ADA blade. And top tip, you can just look down the side of the glass to see any specific areas which need attention. There are some shrimp in here that are doing well, which I donated to Lawrence. And yeah, you can clearly add the shrimp from day one, even with an active soil. And my understanding is that the fast plant growth helps to deal with that water quality to minimise any nitrogen compounds from building, which will potentially harm livestock. But we've waited 3 weeks to add the final fish. Filter will be mature, and yeah, we can add quite a large population of fish right from day one, or not day one, day 21. And it'll be lovely to see all of the fish at the end. So please stay tuned all the way. I have already exchanged the CO2 regulator. I did lend Lawrence my super high-end GLA regulator, and I've swapped it for a Strideways, which is actually arguably better, as seems to have a better needle valve for controlling the bubble rate. I will do a deep dive on the Strideways reg because it's a really good bit of kit that I'd like to show you guys more of. Some people see maintenance as a chore, but I actually really enjoy the process. It helps you to connect with your creation on a deeper level, pay full attention to what you're doing, and just really enjoy the constant, hopefully, improvement of the scape over the weeks, months and even years. No reason why you can't run a high-tech tank like this for years with the same plants. You know, the plants will keep regenerating new growth if you look after them properly. Next job is just to clean any visible diatoms off the rocks. You could leave this really, it doesn't affect the aquarium at all, but just for visual. And if you clean it little and often, rather than letting it build up, it's much easier to do small maintenance sessions like this rather than huge kind of overhauls. So it's more of a preventative maintenance than a corrective maintenance, if that makes sense. It's really great to see the Monte Carlo doing what I was hoping to, sort of cascading as an epiphyte plant amongst the cracks. At the top tip, you can just turn a stone over and the underside will be algae free. Just bearing in mind those strata lines. Next job, we're going to just trim this Rotala green. A couple of stems here which will benefit the aesthetic by trimming them off. And then we can actually replant those to form a denser bush. Stem plants tend to respond very well to trimming, especially in a high-tech environment like this. Moving on to the Ludwigia Super Red. Doesn't really need trimming, but as before, it will promote new growth. And actually, Ludwigia in particular, the species, does send out a lot of side shoots, so you can really promote a more bushy appearance by trimming. Wherever you trim from, it tends to produce 2 new shoots, so you can like double the biomass relatively quickly. Yeah, there's definitely some diatoms on some of the slower growers like the Boos and the Anubias, but the algae eating fish that we have will deal with that, no problem. Now I'm going to go down to the Staragini, just trim a couple of the stems. Again, this produces nice side shoots as well, which will promote the bushy growth. You can see they've all adapted to the underwater form already. You can see the crypts are growing really well, no melt at all, which is impressive. Okay, now with the offcuts, which are now floating of course in the aquarium, we can replant those. If you didn't want to replant and you didn't have any use for the offcuts, then do make sure you dispose of them responsibly so there's no chance of them entering any natural waterways, as they can become invasive. So the usual technique is just to replant it into the soil. There's a gap there, and then I'll show you another technique in a moment. You could obviously do this, you could remove some of the water to make it a bit easier potentially, but we'll do a water change later. Now we have a final couple of pieces of Rotala green. Now another popular technique with high-tech aquascaping is to actually use a thing called topping. So rather than planting the stem directly in the soil, you can literally just push it in amongst the other stems and it will grow almost as an epiphyte, because it can take all the nutrients and the CO2 it needs. So you can get a nice instant effect by doing this. So just be mindful of sort of circulation patterns. You know, the filter flow might actually dislodge the stems over time, but ideally what will happen is that stem will produce aerial roots, they're called, and that will form an anchor around the other stems. This is a technique I use a lot in my little tropical aqua cube for the Rotala HRAR. I was doing that this morning, in fact. Actually learnt this topping technique from Green Aqua a few years ago. Staragini, there is some diatom build-up on those lower leaves, but again, they'll hopefully be dealt with by the algae eaters, or just in time. Diatoms generally die back as the scape matures. And Lawrence hasn't been running 100% lighting yet, but I will encourage him to boost his lighting and levels a little bit, especially to deal with these new cuttings, and also extend his photo period from 6. In fact, you can only go 6 to 8, can't you, on the timer? Yeah, just go up one level of the intensity in 8 hours, I reckon that should do the trick. Okay, we've got a stem here of the Ludwigia palustre Super Red, and by increasing your lighting level this will get even redder, like a crimson colour. And we'll just use the topping technique for this as well. This does have aerial roots already, so that's going to be very easy to anchor. It's a very therapeutic process in my mind, doing this sort of thing. You're dealing with live plants and constantly refining the scape, you know, according to your own taste. And as long as you stick to a few basic guidelines, there is no way you can go wrong, really. We've got such a nice system here with plenty of light, plenty of CO2, plenty of nutrients in the soil and in the water column with the liquid fertiliser. I'm actually going to trim some of the Monte Carlo to encourage a more compact and dense bushiness. So over here, for instance, it's quite kind of, I wouldn't say leggy, but not quite as dense as we would like potentially. And again, you can replant any cuttings. You can just trim off there, that's coming into the foreground a bit too much. These are literally just wedged in the nooks and crannies, so just be careful not to dislodge anything too much, because it could just completely float away in one movement if we're not careful. A couple of random stems of Rotala there which you can trim back, and then we can replant that around there if we wish to increase the bushiness again. All about increasing the bushiness, Lawrence. That could probably do with reinserting. It's a bit floaty, which is a technical term. Don't be afraid to be too forceful. We don't want to damage the plant too much, but we definitely don't want it floating away. And again, wherever we trim these, effectively this is a stem plant. It just grows like in a horizontal fashion. Wherever we trim these stems, it's going to create 2 new shoots. So that's quickly going to form more bushiness. Okay, now we've got lots of floating material there. We'll pick out the best bits and then replant those, and then we'll net off any excess that we don't want to use. So So it's really a good idea to set aside some me time when you're maintaining your tanks. Almost make it a non-negotiable task where you can really indulge in your own hobby. You know, use it as a form of meditation or mindfulness, as I like to do. Have you cleaned the pre-filter yet, Lawrence?
Yes.
Yeah. Easy enough for you?
Yeah.
And thanks to everyone that commented about the Purigen. It does do it. Apparently, it does definitely need rinsing, and that was definitely the cause of our cloudy water. So I do feel a little bit guilty for leaving Lawrence with a cloudy tank. It's one of my pet hates, but Lawrence was very understanding and very grateful for that. Next job is to take a closer look at this trident fern, because there are some unhealthy portions and unhealthy leaves, and it's best just to, with a purposeful tug, pull the whole leaf away from the rhizome. Well, in fact, I've pulled the whole rhizome there. That's okay, because we're going to kind of propagate that. So let's start afresh. So trident fern is regarded as an easy plant, but it definitely does benefit from CO2 and more lighting, and it can, because this is the potted variety, it does take a little while to adapt to its underwater form, because this is grown hydroponically in the greenhouses, which means basically out of water. So you will experience inevitably some die off, and it's better to remove any really unhealthy leaves so the plant can put the rest of its energy, which is all stored in the rhizome. So we could actually pull all the leaves away from the rhizome, just plant the rhizome, and that's going to generate quite happily new leaves, but obviously doesn't look so nice. So the rhizome we can just use as an anchoring point, just tuck it into a little crack. Sometimes Microsorum species propagates itself by creating plantlets on the end of leaves, and this can manifest in like dark spots sometimes. So don't be afraid, it's not a disease. It's nothing to be afraid of, it's just the nature of the plant. So this is looking a bit straggly, this leaf here. So just slide your finger all the way to the rhizome, being again mindful that these were just inserted into cracks, so we don't want to dislodge the whole plant ideally. The issue with not removing the leaf from the rhizome fully is that that kind of damaged leaf will kind of rot away, and the plant will spend unnecessary energy trying to repair it. That's why we don't really trim ferns so much. You know, like stems, it's a completely different type of plant. Ferns are actually one of the oldest types of plants that existed on the planet, so it's why they kind of maybe invoke this ancient feel in my mind in an aquascape, especially when they're attached to wood. It's kind of what you'd expect to see in an ancient jungle, an ancient forest. Similar story with mosses. Mosses and ferns tend to go together really well. Also a good idea just to touch the plants, don't be afraid. So you can get really intimate with the plants, and it's actually useful to touch it, because by doing that you're actually dislodging any collected organics that build up on the leaves that can potentially be a prerequisite to algae growth. You know, show respect to the plants and they'll respect you back. And there's just a bit of algae build up there. It really is attention to detail, you know, all these details add up. Good idea, even though you can't see any algae building up on the silicon work, good idea to give that a good clean as well, because it will eventually build up chronically over the months, and it's actually very, very tough to remove. So if you can get in the habit of cleaning the silicon every time you maintain the tank, it's just going to prevent it from building, obviously. And as with most maintenance, I prefer to focus on preventative maintenance rather than corrective. Time for a water change, and during that process we'll also clean the glassware, which is pretty immaculate. Have you cleaned the glassware yourself yet?
Sponge, yeah.
Yeah, on the outside.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because you can see some build up there slightly, and definitely the hose needs a little bit of a clean. So I have turned off the CO2, ready to acclimatise the fish. Start acclimatising them as we fill up with fresh dechlorinated water that's been temperature adjusted. I think we're running about 24°C in here. And then whilst also that's draining, we can clean the pre-filter. Probably won't be very dirty at all because we've only got a few shrimp in here, but still a good practice to keep that pre-filter well maintained in order to maintain flow and circulation. Okay, that's siphoning nicely. Do have hard water mark there that we can clean off. Again, preventative maintenance, just clean that every time you maintain the tank. Stops it building up, especially people with hard water like me and Lawrence. So Lawrence was doing daily water changes for the first week, every other day in the second week, and then twice a week for this third week. And now you can go to probably 1, maybe 2 a week if you can be bothered. 50% water changes a week. I've actually got the light on the dimmest setting, believe it or not. I've exposed it on the camera so it looks brighter than it really is. But just to give you an impression of how bright, that was maximum, and then we want it on minimum, which is that one there. So we have our fish here, 4 species altogether. We've got 3 display fish and 1 algae eating species. So we just float them now like so, just to acclimate the temperature. Don't know if you can tell what any of the species are yet. Always a little bit stressful doing this job, you know, transferring fish from one tank to another. So important that we cause them as little stress as possible. There is a school of thought that suggests you should do it in a dark aquarium, but another one suggests that when you do put the lights on, it's just going to startle them. So I think having the lights on dim is a nice compromise to that. There's so many different ways to acclimate, but this is the one I do and I never see any losses, so it works for me. Like I say, the CO2's been turned off. It hasn't come on today at all, so the CO2 level will be low in the aquarium, which is important because the aquarium shop doesn't inject CO2, so there will be a difference in pH. CO2 does impact on pH, of course. Just roll the bags back on themselves, and then we can gradually add our aquarium water into the bag water. Lawrence has tested his water for ammonia and nitrite and nitrate, and they're all almost zero. I mean, the ammonia and the nitrite are zero or undetectable, and the nitrate is very low. So Abby's home now and she'll see these new fish. How was your day at school?
It was good.
Yeah, what did you learn?
We played hockey.
Hockey? I love hockey. Do you like hockey?
I do, but I'm not good at it.
Oh, okay. What's your favourite sport?
Netball.
Netball. Are you good at netball? What position do you play?
I play wing attack.
Wing attack? Does that mean you attack wings? So we've got 4 different species of fish in here, and I know you definitely like one of them. Can you guess what it is? They're not very colourful at the moment because they're not settled in, but by the end of the day they will be very colourful, hopefully. So can you see these ones?
Yeah.
Do you like those? Do you know what they're called? Cardinal tetras. And we've got some algae eating fish here. These are called pandagaras, and they would just eat, can you see this brown stuff that's building up on the rocks? So I've cleaned it off now, but on the gravel, some of the leaves, they'll eat that to keep everything nice and clean. And then we have your dad's favourites, the rummy-nosed tetra. You see these ones? Look a bit boring at the moment, but they'll get really bright red heads, and they got like a checkerboard tail. And then we've got some, these are beautiful, these are quite rare. These are called scarlet tetras. Okay. Can you see they've got the lovely red and black stripe on them?
Yeah.
So we've got 3 display fish, and then we've got 1 algae eating fish. And then we saw some blue shrimp, but we didn't get them today. Dad's going to maybe get them in a few weeks, maybe. You happy?
Yeah.
It's cool, isn't it? So we're going to show your dad how to clean the hoses and stuff now. Just gently pull off your connector from your Biomaster here. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to remove the outlet here. You basically just wiggle the hose on the seal to break the seal, and then you can just gently pull it off. Okay, time to disconnect the inlet. This is the most wet time that you'll probably experience. So now the technique is, most people, because you should think you should pull, but it doesn't, because that constricts the hose. So you actually want to push and wiggle at the same time. So I'm going to try and get out of the way of the camera. So hold your inlet quite firmly, and then sort of push and wiggle your hose. Could you hear the break then? Could you hear the break of the seal? And then just really carefully. And then what you need to do is actually lift the inlet quite quickly, because it's going to start back siphoning. So get as near the edge as you can, and then quickly, see that? And now you've got water in this hose here. Okay, so now we can simply remove the whole hose assembly, including the CO2 diffuser, and just gently pull it out. Hopefully there won't be any water in there now. If there is, we can just tip it into there. So now we have our hoses we can take to the sink and our glassware, and we'll clean them with a hose brush. To clean the glassware, let's do that first. That's the most dangerous job. I just use, some people bleach, some people have 2 sets and keep one on soak in bleach the whole time to swap over, but I just like to clean it on the go, and I like to use running tap water. And again, it's preventative maintenance, so the build-up isn't excessive at all. Do you have a brush that you, sponge that you use for aquariums?
Yes.
So we clean the outside with that. I think you've done that recently by the look of it, have you?
Yeah.
But just to show the audience. Thank you, mate. Cheers. So Denolay Cleanator, run a bit of warm water. Doesn't need to be super hot, but just clean the outside. It's very clean already. Just a slight build-up of diatoms on the inside. So fill it up with water. Get your hose brush in there. And then very gently, turn it off, a bit noisy. Just push it through. I say gently, you need to do it with purpose, but being mindful that it is glass. So you do need to give it a yank. You could try using the smaller brush if it's, yeah, that's still going to actually clean it, so we'll use that because it's going to be easier. So fill out the water again. Okay, that's the inlet done. What tends to happen is you get a build-up of the algae at the bottom here. There is a technique where I ram it all the way down, and then you can kind of twist and pull, twist and push, twist and pull, and hopefully it just agitates that enough, and then the flowing warm water will get rid of it all. If that's a problem, you can just soak this bottom part in some bleach solution, give it a whirl around, and that will help as well. But make sure you dechlorinate afterwards, because bleach is obviously full of chlorine. Okay, same process with the outlet, the lily pipe. Okay, that's it, nice and easy. Well, not easy, but not as complicated or as dangerous as some people might find. So that's nicely safe there, keep that out of the way so you don't trip up over it. Okay, now this is a real top tip. I actually learnt this from Yuri's, my German aquascaping colleague. So on the Biomaster you have your hose connector fitting here. Now what you can do, at the moment this is locked off, so there's nowhere the water can't flow through here basically. So what we can do is actually manually open that up like so, and now we can actually come in this end with our hose brush while it's all connected. We don't need to disconnect anything, like keep it nice and simple. Have some warm water flowing through. Full clean hoses, not forgetting that we need to now lock this off again, because when we fit it to the Biomaster it needs to be that configuration, otherwise it won't fit on properly. There we go, ready to take this back to the tank and refit. Okay, more acclimating. Just before we refit our hose. So it's almost the reverse process, of course, to refit connector into the filter end. Let's thread in our hoses appropriately first. So now we just refit our hose connector. It's very obvious how it goes on. There's only one way it can fit. So push that on firmly, and then we can lock that off now. Pre-filter's cleaned already. Let's refit our CO2 hose while we're here. You can just double check all of your connectors, like your CO2 inline diffuser, make sure it hasn't come disconnected during the cleaning process. We were quite forceful with it. Reconnect your CO2 hose onto your diffuser. If it is a very snug fit, you can always warm it up with hot water, but we're okay. Refit the securing nut. Okay, so really be mindful of any areas of potential leaking. Just give it a double check, make sure everything's attached and screwed on as much as we can. Make sure the hoses are on the diffuser, the hoses are on the actual filter connector there. So before we attach the suction caps, top tip, keep it loose, being careful it's glass on glass. Give it a bit of lube around there like so, and then lube up your hose. Outlet fitted. Same process with the inlet, and then again a bit of lubrication makes it more comfortable. Perfect. So the inlet strainer is below the water line, so we can actually prime the filter properly, get all the water through the hoses. Prime it properly once we're full of water. So the CO2 is still off, remember we don't want to shock those fish. But now we can continue to refill our tank with dechlorinated tap water. I think Lawrence is using Seachem Prime. So by now the fish will be acclimated to the temperature and also the water chemistry, which is similar to the store they come from. Huntingdon has a very similar water chemistry to my current location. Stop those plants from drying out, remember. This is really cool. This is a 3D printed sort of diffuser for the end. And now we can start pumping water in, mate. I'll let you do that because you've done that before.
Yep.
So Lawrence has a submersible pump in his kitchen sink. He uses a separate bucket and pumps, gets the water to temperature with his mixer tap, and then pumps the water in and adds dechlorinator at the beginning of the process. So we have our fresh dechlorinated tap water going in, perfect temperature. Now we can actually release the fish, I reckon, Lawrence. These are the rummy nose tetras.
No, it's fine.
We're free! We're in our new home. Thank you for giving us a beautiful new home, Abby. So they're not very colourful at the moment, but when they settle in over the next couple of days or so, they'll get really bright red heads, hopefully, and they'll stay together in a nice shoal. You know what a shoal is? Where all the fish swim together. Come on, you little... There, we're free again. You just have to make sure there's no fish caught in the bag anywhere. So these will hang around together at first, but then they'll probably spread out a little bit more than the rummy nose. Okay, now these are the beautiful ones. These are called scarlet tetras. These are the pandagaras. These are algae-eating fish. So these will kind of graze all the surfaces, the plant leaves, for any algae. So hopefully they'll come out nice for us. There's 5 in there altogether. I don't think there's any caught in there. Okay, so there we have the tank fully maintained, including cleaning the hoses, trimming the plants, cleaning the pre-filter, And of course adding our fish, combination of cardinal, rummy nose and scarlet tetras. Been a great day. Thank you so much to Lawrence for allowing me to film this update. I'm sure the family are going to enjoy this even more now there's fish in there. Really does bring a scape to life, and it is worth waiting those few weeks just to give a bit of delayed gratification and allow the system to mature. Can't wait to see it grow in, and I'm sure I'll be back again for future updates. Hope you enjoyed the video. Take care. Cheerio.